Used to doing this so early. Guys, if you're watching this later on, feel free to fast forward. We're going to hang out for just a minute and let some folks jump on, and y'all know the deal. We're going to start out giving you a good 6 minute executive summary on everything. So if that's all you can watch, hang in for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then well, feel free to enjoy the rest of the video. I think we're going to get into some pretty deep stuff. A lot has happened, so excited to get rolling. So, all right, I'm seeing some folks jumping in, and hopefully you can hear me. If I could get a comment, and while you're telling me that you can hear me or not, then hit that share button. Tag some folks that you think might be interested in what's going on, which I think is a lot of folks based on what I've seen on the Facebook. Well,
which Phil did point out in court is everybody's First Amendment right to enjoy engage in the use of Facebook. We can talk about that later too. I thought that was pretty cool.
That's right.
Since they kept commenting in court about what the Facebook page says all the time.
Yeah, apparently the mayor has a lot of angst about the Facebook page.
We heard about the Facebook page a lot.
Well, all right, guys. So as y'all are jumping in, again, hit that share button, and we're getting buzzing. I can hear through the microphone here. So guys, sitting here with the legal team, the plan, we're going to do about 6 minutes of with a countdown timer, just to put a little more pressure. And hit the high points. I promise I won't do much talking once we're done with the intro, and then I'll read through your questions. I think Reba had 1 or 2 questions that she posted earlier today. So I was told to pass them along to you. So we'll get in there. So Reba, I know you're here, so go ahead and ask those questions again. A lot of good questions. I think that's most everything. So you guys recovered from a fun week so far? Hey, you know, and you know, I'm going to throw props out to Reba again, and a huge thank you for those of us that could not be in court. We had our own court reporter. What is a court reporter called?
Court reporter.
They're called court reporters.
I thought there was.
It's a thing.
They report on the proceedings of the court.
All right, this is going to be a fun one, guys. All right, so yeah, but a huge thanks to Reba for keeping us informed and doing a phenomenal job. In fact, I think some of the traditional media folks were probably going to be reading in on what she posted as well. So,
well, they had to make sure they didn't keep identifying me as Josh Sullivan. So that's important.
Yeah, sorry, I'm covering up Josh. I'll sit back, guys, so y'all can see him.
You're fine.
But yeah, I know we'll probably get some of this video will be used on the news as well, based on what we've seen. So, and I sort of laugh, but it is we are appreciative of any exposure, any awareness that is brought about the issues that we're fighting here in Etowah County, because it's nuts. I don't know any other way to say that, and I've had a lot of the same conversation over the last few days. I just can't believe this is all going on. So, all right, we've got about 65 folks in here. Okay, somebody said, as a former journalist, I was very jealous of her work. Nice. Stenographer. That's a thing, right? Yeah, that's the word.
Thing. Okay.
All right. So, yeah, somebody threw that in the comments. All right, thanks, guys. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to bring up a counter. Whoops, I already started it.
I can just count in the background for Christy. 1, 2.
All right, so we're gonna set a 6-minute clock. And Christy's going to give us an executive summary. So, guys, if this is all, I know there's a lot of stuff like a Southside graduation, which, by the way, if you're sitting in the Southside graduation watching this right now, just chill. You can watch it later. Enjoy the kids graduating. That's pretty awesome. A lot of stuff going on right now. So if you can only watch this 6 minutes, this will give you a good overview of everything. But then we're going to dive deeper and let these guys talk through what they feel is most important. And I'll try and inject some questions from you guys. So, and we got a one Mississippi in the comments. All right. So, Christy, I will turn it over to you.
All right, so I'll try to, summarize kind of how we got here, what happened, and where we're going. Dynamic Collision is the plaintiff in this case. Josh is the attorney for the plaintiff. There's 25 intervenors who are adjacent property owners, half of which are represented by Phil, half of which are by me. So there were 3. This is your opposition team. When I describe on the Facebook page what your team did, this is it, okay? So the case was filed because the city had stated previously that they did not intend to rezone the Pilgrim's Pride property that's at the airport that the Gadsden Airport Authority owns. We asked the court in this court filing to force the airport authority and the city to rezone it if they intended to proceed. This case was filed in January, and there's a July 23rd final hearing date. In April, we got I got provided with a bid notice that Pilgrim's Pride had sent that they had issued bids for construction, and that construction was supposed to start in August 2021. So we learned that. We immediately filed asking for a preliminary injunction hearing that would enjoin the city and the airport authority from continuing with any of these activities until we can get to a final hearing and the evidence can be fully heard. That's what happened this week, was the preliminary injunction hearings where we were asking for that. Our job was to prove that there was imminent danger, a threat of imminent danger or harm, that the city or the airport authority would proceed with the project before the July 23rd hearing, and ask the court to enjoin them from doing that. As part of the hearing, we issued subpoenas for appearance to 16 or 18 different people, asking that they appear or ordering they appear at court. It's a 2-day hearing. The first day was on Monday. We finished up yesterday around 4:30. Sherman Guyton, David Hooks, Harry Mcclendon, and Brian Harbison were among those that were called to the stand. David Hooks is the IDA director. He started us off. He initially only provided 7 pages of records, despite the fact he admitted he had thousands and thousands of them. Later on Thursday, he did provide more. He gave those in camera, which means just to the judge to review. And we don't know what those are yet. The judge is reviewing those. He told us what some of them were, but we're not sure. The IDA lawyer is supposed to file a privileged log with the court, so we know what that is. David Hooks made real clear he intends to proceed forward with this. He's the point guy. He's been working with Sherman and Harry and everybody. He's the point guy here. He thinks this is a good idea. He intends to proceed with this, but his position is all his activities and records are private. They are confidential. The public doesn't get to see them. And in fact, he took the position that the court's order that he was supposed to provide them didn't apply to him. None of those laws that require people to disclose stuff apply to him. So he's going to continue in that manner and operate behind closed doors. Sherman testified. He said he didn't know anything about the rendering plan at all until the last week of November 2020. I asked him that a couple times. That's when yes. So the last week, November 2020, is when he first heard of it, and and he hadn't heard about it prior to that. He said he basically knew nothing about it, was not involved with it. He can't stop it. He spoke to no one about it. It's up to the city council. It's not up to him. That his only job at the city is to manage employees in streets and parks and rec. That's all he does up there. He can't stop it. There's nothing he can do. So Harry Mcclendon, the chairman of the airport authority, he testified. He said, contrary to the representations he made at a February airport authority meeting, that he had not been approached by Pilgrim's Pride. He admitted that he met with Pilgrim's Pride in June 2020 about putting a rendering plan at the airport. He has discussed the project with Sherman Guyton, Frankie Davis, Chad Hare, David Hooks, the FAA. He provided emails where he and Davis and Hooks and the FAA have been working to move the Pilgrim's Pride project ahead. He authorized the property to be appraised. He's authorized environmental studies. there's a lot of actions that had gone on, but when pressed, he continued to say he was never formally approached. And so he says no formal offer has been made by Pilgrim's Pride. A lot of wordplay, a lot of games with formal offers, and there's no formal deal. Brian Harbison, he testified. He's the head of the city building department. He's over zoning, so that's why he was called to the stand. He testified. He agreed that the use of the property for a rendering plant is more likely to be an I-2 and rather than I-1, which is what we say that it ought to be, and then it should probably be rezoned. He also admitted that the zoning ordinance could be read in a way that rendering isn't allowed at all. He admitted there were zoning regulations affecting the airport that could impact whether or not the rendering plant could come here. The court ordered briefs to be filed. We finished up testimony. Briefs are going to be filed next week, and the judge wouldn't issue an order till after that, which would be the week of June 7th would be the earliest it would be. The final hearing scheduled for July 23rd. If the judge grants our preliminary injunction, they can't move forward with anything until there's a final hearing, and the judge can make a final call on that. If he doesn't enter the preliminary injunction, it lets them proceed with moving this project forward until we get to our July final hearing. David Hooks made real clear he thinks this is a good idea. Unless he's stopped by the court, he's moving this thing ahead. He has individually talked to the council, and he implied he felt confident that if it was brought before the council for a vote, it would pass. Did I cover it all? Oh.
Thank you all for tuning in.
I know. Drop the mic.
Hey, now, these things aren't cheap. Well, all right. So keep dropping some questions in there. And so now that that's out of the way, so hopefully, guys, if that gets you up to speed, a good quick version. Obviously, there's a ton more to unpack. So where do we want to start?
Let me ask you, Christy, you had mentioned as a part of the summary that Sherman testified that he wasn't involved until the latter part of November, but there was evidence that you had offered to clearly show that he was involved, and there was not only emails and correspondence were, and also realize people, Sherman doesn't email, doesn't text, so he usually has his I guess mayor's assistant that the emails go through, but there was also some meetings or at least a conference call that he was involved in. So I think that that's important to kind of cover that.
Yeah, we had a lot of evidence that he had been involved, that he was on calls. There were letters he had received, emails, not his office had received, but actual letters that were addressed to him. When asked about all of that, he denied all of it and said it was not until the last week of November before he knew anything about it, despite we provided what we believe to be evidence showing that he clearly knew, and others actually testified, Hooks and Harry both, that they talked to him about it. But despite those facts, Sherman said that he didn't know anything about it.
There were even documents, if I recall, y'all correct me if I'm wrong, that required his signature. That we didn't have the signed copy in front of us. We had the place where his signature was supposed to go, and literally he would say, "Well, I don't recall ever signing that." And then Harry confirmed that they did sign it and send it in. And then the other thing that he said more than once was he has people that handle those things, and they just tell him what to do.
That's right. And remember the MOU that they argue is just a drafted that was from him, and Hooks even said that incentives and understandings were reached back in July 2020. The city offered incentives, according to David Hooks, in July 2020 on this, but Sherman said he knew nothing about it until the last week of November, despite multiple parties and documents which indicated otherwise.
In fact, I think one of the most incredible moments of the entire two-day event that we just had was, and it was at a particular moment for me, I say incredible, when I was actually taking the mayor on examination. And David Hooks had been on the stand, and David Hooks had already affirmed that, yes, local and state incentives have been offered. And to clarify, we know the city council hasn't voted, so they're not official yet, but they're offerings. They're what we will approve if the time comes. And that being said, I was asking the mayor, I said, Mayor, if the city council hasn't voted on it, and I'm paraphrasing, but if the city council hasn't voted on it, well, then who at City Hall helped put that together? Did you do it? I don't know what you're talking about. And it was a constant refusal this had ever happened, to the point that he finally said, I don't know who told you that, but whoever it was, they were lying. And I said, well, it was David Hooks, and he's sitting right over there, and he's the man you said you rely on. And at that point, he sat back in his chair and goes, well, it must be true then, which was a complete weird moment.
And we asked him too. Part of the thing asked him is he kept saying he doesn't make those decisions. Who would make the decision to agree for them to come here? He doesn't make the decision. He doesn't. And so it's the council. The council keeps making that. That's who does that. And then I point out to him, like, well, the council says they can't. The council says that they can't even adopt a resolution opposing it before it's brought to them. And he said, well, and I said, so who stops it then? If you can't stop it and they say they can't stop it, who can stop it? And he was like, I mean, we could never, it was all this, the same thing we keep hearing is no one will take responsibility. Sherman says he can't stop it. The council says they can't stop it. And David Hooks is operating in privacy behind the scenes the whole time, bringing it forward because no one will stop it. And it's beyond frustrating.
So with that, along those lines, Reba asked, any pending perjury charges from all of this? I know that question got asked quite a few times in the comments. So any thoughts on that from, I mean, not just the mayor, but
yeah, I would say no. And
okay.
I say that in a practical sense. I'll also just tell you, and my compadres can chime in, but as attorneys, we have what they call rules of professional conduct, things we're bound to, the ethics laws basically for attorneys. And they specifically say that we cannot threaten criminal action to get our way in a civil action. And so to do something like that would probably result in us getting fined by the bar.
And one of the comments I've seen on the Facebook page about that is that the ADEM, the permit applications that the ADEM, where like Pilgrim said it's the owner, and I've told a couple people who've asked me that question, that's really ADEM's claim, because it was to a ADEM permit agency that if there was a false statement made, that's who would have the power in order to enforce this. And I specifically asked the ADEM attorney, because I pointed that out, like, it is a misrepresentation, and the ADEM attorney said they didn't intend to do anything about it.
Yeah, and to Reba's question too, and I want to be careful to not imply that we're saying there were bold-faced lies. Now, does it feel like there's been what we would call dilatory obfuscation? There's a fancy Scrabble word for you, but the bottom line is, are they evading? I feel like they are. But then there's also plenty of times, when you're literally allowed to do what's called refreshing the recollection of a witness. You're allowed to remind them of things, and then they can help rehabilitate their testimony. Stuff like that happens. But it does feel like there was quite a bit of true evasiveness going on. And as we're looking at all the things that are being, put behind the shield of confidentiality and everything else.
Well, and you mentioned, I mean, in your executive summary there, the playing with words seems to be something that we've seen a lot. And particularly, I know on the legal side, playing of words means a lot because words have meaning, and that's why you guys have jobs, which is awesome. But for those of us in the public side, we can call a spade pretty easily. So it will be interesting. And guys, I'll tell you, there's a lot of documents and a lot of stuff that can be released to the public. I know I have not been badgering these guys too much because I know they've had a lot on their plate, but we're definitely trying to figure out what all can be released for everybody to dig through, because I know everybody wants to do that. So all those plays on words and all that kind of stuff, it will be interesting to see what you guys think.
And the idea too is that's not law. I mean, the judge is up there evaluating what the credibility of everybody is, and so the point is that those types of play on words is not lost. So we felt like there was an ample opportunity for us to point out that perhaps some of the statements that were made were in dispute when the records were actually shown to them.
You got a question? I was going to go with something for Josh, but
No, y'all go ahead. I'm trying to dig through, and Reba, you got tons of questions. I don't know that I'm going to get to all of them today.
a thing to sort of cue up Josh on this. I thought one of the best moments we had was regarding your examination of Brian Harbison on the question of ordinances and zoning, and Christy touched on that in her executive summary, but dig into that for a minute, because what we thought we heard was this actually may go well in our favor in terms of the zoning.
Yeah, the main issue as part of this case is the property is currently zoned as an I-1 property, which is a light industry property. Part of the contention is if the property is to be rezoned, and that's another issue that I'll talk about in a second. But if it is to be rezoned, it should be more of an I-2, which is a heavy industry type of property. And so looking basically as to how the zoning ordinance is organized for the city of Gadsden is you have a list of uses. And when you're looking at the specific use in this case, we're dealing with a rendering plant. The problem is that the listed uses do not include actually any reference to any rendering plant. So the question then is there's two different subparts of the zoning ordinance, and they actually contradict each other. One that I think that we are primarily relying upon is it says if it is not listed, then the use is prohibited. They cannot do it at all without getting some type of special variance permit, so forth.
Which Brian Harbison agreed with you that could be interpreted that way.
Exactly, yes. But then I think the city's position is there's another subpart that says, well, if it's not listed, then they can look at the character of the operations and then you find a similar use. And when you look at there's what's called SIC codes. It's kind of a classification system where you can kind of describe the nature of a company by using a code or a certain number. The number that is used on many applications that were submitted to ADEM by Pilgrim's Pride was SIC code 2077. In terms of that code, it makes reference to I think it's an animal fats manufacturer. And when you look at the actual zoning ordinance, it does have a specific use for a animal fat manufacturer, and that would be an I-2. So I think at the end of the day, Brian basically concluded, or not, I guess didn't officially conclude, but I think as of the time of the hearing, indicated that it was probably more akin to a I-2 type of use rather than the I-1 that it presently is.
Yeah, he flat said that, and that was one of those watershed moments I felt like for this particular case, because this is a zoning case, is when the building department official said it could very well be more akin to an I-2, and I thought that was a good moment. And I will say too, I felt like Brian Harbison gave some of the most candid and upfront testimony from the opposite side that we've seen yet.
He did, yes.
And I would say before you said that, I think it is worth making sure that everybody understands this is not a case about should you build or not build, or can you build or not build.
Yeah.
Right. This is a zoning case. So
yeah, and that's a fair point. So there are multiple strategies to deal with the question of should a rendering plat ever be here. One of them is this case, just one. And that one is, can you even build it on a property that you, City of Gadsden, have already zoned to do other things with? And if you're gonna do it and you're gonna try to build it, then you need to go through other steps that allow the public to have input on zoning issues before you ever even start breaking ground.
That case can't, is it a nuisance to even have it here? If we get to that point where they are building and building permits have been, that's when that case happens. So don't think that if this case doesn't go the way we want it, or that if it continues on or something, that there's not, because I get asked that question a whole lot, and that is a case. But the hope is that we can stop it before we get to that point. But if we do get up to that point, that's another tool we have in the toolbox.
Which I will point out too, one of the closing arguments, well, they said it multiple times, was there's no imminent threat of harm, Your Honor. There's nobody with golden shovels turning dirt right now. We're years away from having a plant that's operational, even if it got approved. All that to say, my reply to that in my closing arguments was, the minute you rezone it, property values get affected because people know what's coming.
Yeah.
And no one wants to buy next to a place that a year and a half from now is going to have a rendering plant.
And we've heard that from realtors around here. I mean, it's already having an impact.
Yeah.
Businesses wanting to move in. Well, there's a good question that I think let's stay on that, the topic. So the question is, whoever owns the property could stop it all, couldn't they? So what did we learn about who owns the property and what is going on with that? And I'd say let's include the discussions with the coordination with the FAA. So who wants to?
Well, I'll start off. The airport authority owns it. Harry Mcclendon confirmed that, which we know, that they own it. He said that they have not been formally approached by Pilgrim's Pride with any offer. But, there have been, a number of steps taken in order to advance the Pilgrim's Pride project along. That begs the question, then there's incentives offered by the city. There's all this due diligence that's been done. Really, the only kind of the remaining step is the rezoning, which they were apparently trying to avoid initially, and then the FAA. Those are kind of what the next steps are. And in fact, the Gadsden Airport Authority already has been coordinating with the FAA in anticipation of asking for them to approve this. So yes, the Airport Authority can stop this, and they haven't.
So to what extent have they been coordinating with the FAA?
A great extent.
Yeah.
Since July.
Yeah.
I mean, since the beginning.
I mean, are they talking in hypotheticals or?
No.
They've got drawings. They've got. I mean, it's a lot of coordination, and Ken, the consultant for the airport authority, in emails is saying, I had a great call with the FAA. Feel really good about it. We think it's going to be all good. I mean, very encouraging type. What stopped them was this sponsorship agreement where they had not initially transferred title from the city to the airport authority back in 2004 the way they were supposed to, and have a co-sponsorship agreement. So all this co-sponsorship agreement stuff we've sent that they did in March really is quietly being done in order to give them the authority to kind of clean up that problem. They can't ask for FAA approval until that co-sponsorship agreement is agreed to, and the FAA's got it right now. They should approve it any day now, and once that happens, it appears to me from the records they are ready to proceed with a application to get it approved by the FAA.
Yeah, and so here's when you start pulling the material pieces together to weave the pattern of what you're really seeing in court. So we had FAA notification to the city and the airport authority, or airport authority, I guess, actually, that you're not in compliance. Christy just referenced that. You can't do this because you don't have the proper, co-sponsorship with the city. Then we had a letter to Congressman Adderholt from City Attorney Lee Roberts in December, I think it was.
It was November 20th.
November,
maybe?
yeah, there you go. So in November, we got the FAA notification. Then you have a letter to Congressman Adderholt because I assume they were trying to seek his intervention with the FAA to help them, because he said in the latter part of the letter, we don't feel like we have time to get all these things done, meaning they had a sense of urgency about it. But they wound up having to proceed forward. Then you have in March, which you just said, which is when the city council passed a resolution to enter into the co-sponsorship agreement, and a document that the mayor does not remember signing, but that Harry Mcclendon says they did. Step after step after step, every bit of this is tied to the rendering plan. The Adderholt letter even mentioned the rendering plan. And so now what you've got there is, you cannot deny that co-sponsorship is just, or say that co-sponsorship is just because you had another something looking at you, that Prince Metal wanted to buy 1 acre. No, the letter says you needed to have this done because of Pilgrim's Pride, and then bam, you got it done while we were in this lawsuit. They got it done.
And that's specifically names Pilgrim's Pride, not like for some maybe project or.
Specifically names Pilgrim's Pride.
Okay.
The Adderholt letter does.
Yeah.
Well, and some of the FAA emails specifically refer to it as well too.
Yeah.
So and Harry also, he testified, not only has that co-sponsorship agreement been signed, it's been submitted to the FAA, and they're waiting. I think Ken Gilbert said at the last airport authority meeting, or one of them, it would take about 60 days for the airport.
And that was almost 60 days ago.
It was almost 60 days ago. Mm-hmm.
So I'm sorry, do you have something, Josh?
Yeah, and basically what the city's trying to argue is Form 7460.
7460. Mm-hmm.
So they're saying that that's where that they can petition the FAA to actually release or sell the property, and they keep on arguing, well, we haven't submitted that yet. Well, the whole reason that they haven't is because there were some compliance issues that they're having to resolve. And so that's a part of that sponsorship agreement, is them quietly doing that is opening up the path. So once that is approved, then they can then proceed with that next step.
So when we let's go back to the play on words, from what I've seen and what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm interpreting this the wrong way, but so we know that the airport authority said to us back in at least January, that they have not been approached by Pilgrim's Pride.
That was the February 19th meeting.
A February 19th meeting.
Yeah.
So, and this is me just calling it like I see it. So technically, they haven't been approached by Pilgrim's Pride because everything's been going on at the city, who has also been working to try and give them more control and capability over the airport. So technically, the airport authority hasn't been approached by Pilgrim's Pride. Nobody has come to an airport authority meeting and put forth anything, and they can say that because it's all been happening elsewhere.
It appears that it's...
And other members of the airport authority have been involved in that whole process, not necessarily at an airport authority meeting or something like that.
This is where if we were using emojis, you'd have the big eyes going like this, because it's like, you really see that?
I mean, am I off base? And I mean, I'm
no, that's right.
I'm trying to understand.
In answering that, it was kind of a telling moment, I thought, as a part of the case. When we had Harry up on the stand, we did play a clip of that exact meeting and that same quote. And I believe the quote that was made by Jonathan Welch, who was speaking on behalf of the authority, was, we have not been approached by Pilgrim's Pride or anybody else for any rendering plan. And so I played that. And then I think the first question, and again, I'm paraphrasing here generally, but was, okay, now that you are under oath, is that still the same position of the authority? And the first thing that Harry mentioned is, well, I have met with Pilgrim's Pride. And actually, truth be told, Harry, acting as the chairman of the airport authority, met with Pilgrim's Pride as early as July of 2020.
June.
Or sorry, June
2020.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm. That's what he said.
So there has been contacts. But then beyond that, yes, you are correct. And I think a part of what I was trying to lay as a part of the examination I had was they are using David Hooks as the go-between. He is the person kind of going back and forth. So while they're playing this game, well, we haven't officially talked with them. It's very clear through emails and correspondence that they are using David to basically pass messages on.
And all David's activities are confidential and private, and we can't see them. So it's all, and so there, what deal has or has not been cut, who has been approached, what has been offered, is all, appears to be, existing with David Hooks, and he refuses to provide it.
And here's the other weird piece of entanglement, a little bit of an inbred situation, is that you've got Harry is the chairman of the airport authority and also sits on the IDA board. Also a member of the airport authority is Jonathan Welch, who spoke and gave those statements at the February meeting, who happens to be the attorney for the IDA. So what we're looking at here is, you hope they're not doing it, but there were times when it appeared that they would say, well, the airport authority, yes, sir, but you have personal knowledge because you're also on the IDA board, don't you? And I'm paraphrasing the situation there. But, to his credit, the judge, more often than not, would just look at the opposition who would object, on those bases and say, well, if he has personal knowledge, I think he can address it. And so the judge, some of the testimony we got in was literally because as they were trying to hide behind which one they were speaking for, the judge would say, yeah, well, if you got personal knowledge, I think you could say it.
I hope that, and we've talked about this a lot through this whole process, I hope that out of all of this, we figure out the future of this county and all these boards is that we really need to limit how many people are serving on what because of the multitude of conflicts of interest. So, hey guys, I'm going to ask you. I'm seeing some questions in here that I don't want to necessarily break into the conversation. If y'all are on there, and I'm seeing some folks answer, but just answer them up. There's some good stuff, but some some information that's been covered in other stuff. We really want to kind of focus on what happened in court and where we're at with all this. So, yeah, please do that, guys. Y'all are awesome. All right. So what else happened? We've covered. Well, we've covered it. So let's stick on the airport because I did see some questions about the airport safety, bird strike, and all of that kind of stuff. Was that discussed at all?
Oh yeah, it was actually. So we had 3 of our plaintiffs provide testimony. We had Trent Thrasher, who could speak to what it means to be a general contractor, to know that contracts are being let for bid. And we had Paul Lambert, thank you, for Dynamic Collision. Obviously spoke to the property values and the concerns he has. And then the other is one of the plaintiffs that I represent is Mr. Todd Harden, who literally said, I chose to keep my business that does national work. Like he's in almost every state he does work here because this is my home. So I keep a twin engine plane hangared at the airport. And he said, and I fly everywhere. In fact, he flew in at 2 a.m. to get back in time for the hearing Thursday from DC. And all that to say, Todd Harden has been flying for 30 years. He's rated for instrument landings, which, if you're not familiar with flight, is the scary side of landing because you're flying by instruments. But he does night and day landings, departure, approach, all of it from Gadsden Airport, and he had plenty to say. And here's the thing: the FAA has said, because we had a document that was entered into evidence, the FAA expresses concern through one of their advisory circulars that issues that have like wastewater treatment ponds, like we're talking about these retention ponds being around the proposed rendering plant. Retention ponds tend to attract birds like geese. Geese bring down planes. And so Todd spoke to the issues related to the fact that bird strike capability or possibility will go exponentially. The FAA recommends those type retention ponds would have to be 10,000 feet away from an airport. 10,000 feet. That's almost 2 miles. They're putting it at the foot of the runway. And then you got on top of that the fact that putting a construction of what we believe the height to be, and they objected left and right. We can't talk about the building, the blueprints, whatever. It's going to be a big building, and it's going to have smokestacks, and everybody knows it. And Todd testified that you put construction in the placement they're talking about, you are changing the approach and departure angles for aircraft. And Gadsden, a lot of folks don't realize, and I knew this because as a paratrooper and as a Army Pathfinder, I helped conduct airborne operations out there. I said on an earlier Facebook post that we used to do that. And I know the National Guard has been directed apparently not to take a position in this.
Not surprised from my experience from the Navy. So
well, I'm just going to tell you, man, that was bunk because I don't mind saying I was on the phone with the general. She was not at all happy until she apparently had a meeting with her boss.
Well, who was spurred by a call from the city's lobbyist.
Yes, we
actually learned that as well, too.
We got a document showing that the city's chief lobbying firm was able to obtain the position of the National Guard. Isn't that interesting? All that to say, I've seen the lay of the land out there, and I do know, and Todd could say even better than I could, that Gadsden has an airfield that is, like, bar none, better than the average small town airport. You could land a C-5 Galaxy out there.
Yep.
And the approach and departure angles are extremely good because there's no major construction in and around them. And we're sacrificing that by putting this rendering plant right there. So there's your answer.
So yeah, that was definitely brought up and discussed because that's, as I've said multiple times, that's a key piece of this whole discussion.
And I'll also say this, Todd Harden, in talking about his concerns, he said literally, if they build this plant, he'll never fly in and out of that airport again. He's going to move.
I would not, and I've got a minor fraction of Todd's flight time, but there's no way, especially if I was in a single engine airplane. And I've tried to suggest, there's a lot of training opportunities for other single engine military guys around here that can come in and buy fuel, and But I would never recommend anybody flying once you get that built.
It's okay because they're going to put up a fence.
Yeah,
That's gonna fix it.
that's the key piece
Yeah.
that I've heard some discussion that was what has been said over the last couple of weeks, is that they're going to put up a fence, which
That's also in the communications they've had with the FAA as well too. That it's okay, we're going to put up a fence.
Oh.
That's going to present. I mean, the birds can't get out of that. So.
All right. Well, we'll not. I could go. I'll go on and on about that, but yeah. So hopefully that answers the questions out there of some of the airport side. That was definitely a key piece. So we'll see if they take Todd as an expert in aviation and listen to a guy that owns an airplane and has been flying for 30 years. I know. I mean, he flies pretty much every day. So if you're not willing to listen to what his input is, then that's sad. Just calling it like I see it. Let me jump through here and see what questions. There's a lot of stuff about how can the city council approve, or how can they approve abatements without the city council being involved.
So they can. And if abatements are offered as part of this, the council would have to approve it. If zoning laws even allow it to be placed there and the property is rezoned for I-2, the council would ultimately have to vote on that. David Hook said he's individually talked to each of them, and he implied that he was going to move everything ahead. He felt like it was appropriate to move it ahead, which tells me he believes that the votes are there in order to achieve that.
Okay. So have we learned anything more from any documentation about what the city council members are thinking?
We're still going through that. There's some
Okay.
very interesting information as it relates to the council and other leaders that perhaps provide some more information. And
Sure.
I can talk about that now, or we can wait, because there's a lot to talk about from these documents about some of the people that have maybe implied that they are not in favor that appear to be. And Jason Wilson and Thomas Worthy are not who I'm talking about. They are none of their communication. They have been apparently excluded from all communications because none of the emails really involve them. But it does involve some of the others.
Well, and you just got those yesterday.
So we're going
Okay.
through that.
Let's dig through. I think it's best to dig through all that kind of stuff before we start. And guys, one of the things that we're talking about, and as this is done, and now we're waiting for at least about 2 weeks is the expectation for the judge to come out with some.
You don't ever know. I mean, easily it will be June 7th before he has all the briefs and ready for him to proceed. So
Okay.
that's the earliest it can be, and he's the judge. It's up to him.
So
what he decides.
We're going to try and work to piece together a timeline from the documentation that we've received, and hopefully get that so that we can, because I've had a few folks. Yeah, I'm kind of lost in all of this, which I'm not surprised. I'm hanging on to the vertical stab, as we would say in the Navy. I'm just trying to hang in there and understand. So I'm glad you guys are in the middle of all of this.
And we're still trying to have, we got a lot of records Monday, and then yesterday we got a lot too. So there's a lot of holes that we're able to fill, but there's a lot of documents that, particularly from the IDA, that we still don't have, that would fill in some more of those gaps. It's a process. We're not finished with that. I'm going to make that clear. That's a fight that that's not over by any stretch of the imagination.
And let me just segue off what she just said. That was one of the most frustrating things about this. Here we have subpoenas in place that say both appear and produce documents. Appear means the witness shows up. Produce means bring your stuff with you. And they literally were showing up, and Christy alluded to this earlier, like, for instance, the IDA, they brought 7 pages, despite the fact that they had talked about how hard it would be to go through the thousands of pages they have. And then what did they do? After David Hooks had testified on Monday, they show up on Thursday with 400 more pages after his testimony.
Which they gave to the judge. We haven't seen it. We don't know what's in there. So the judge did describe a couple of the items that were in there, but there's a whole other ones that we are supposed to get a log. That's what I was referring earlier.
Okay.
Their attorney is supposed to provide a log of what those are, so we can go back to the judge and argue we should get those. And then there's, even if 400 pages were, the judge does have that. There's still another, 1,500 pages of whatever else. So we believe that's not a complete and full response on behalf of the IDA, particularly when the IDA appears to be the point man with all of this.
I think one of the most interesting disclosures we had, though, and it seemed more Johnny on the spot, was the water board. They came in Monday morning and they handed us all the paperwork.
Organized.
Granted, yeah, I would have liked to have had it sooner, but still, they came in that morning, and there were some gold nuggets in that stack. There were.
Yeah, that was the compliance of Chad Hare at the water board was a light in all the non-compliance that we received and the struggle. The reason it took so long to try this case is because just getting these records and people showing up, it was very a challenge. But I can definitely say that was kind of a good part of this, is getting all of the documents we got from Chad Hare. He appeared to be very compliant with the orders of the court.
Well, good. And so Chad was one that y'all had subpoenaed, but he ended up not getting on the stand.
Yeah, he provided the records. He complied with what we had. So ultimately, we didn't have to see. For example, with Hooks, he refused to even produce any records to us until we put him on the stand. His attorney's initial position is, I was like, where are the IDA records? And Welch said, we'll give them to you when you put him on the stand. So that's why he went first, and then we put him on the stand, and he had no records to give us more than the 7 pages. So
And
until Thursday morning when they had 400 more.
that's right.
And he was straightforward and answered all of your questions directly.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely took
not.
6 hours to get answers.
6 hours. And in fact, the records we were able to ask him, is this what happened? Either I don't remember, I don't know. Well, let's show an email where you wrote an email. Oh, well, yeah, I guess that might have been how that happened. I mean, it was just, I don't remember, I don't know, that's not what that says. I mean, just, I'm not obligated to tell you any of that. I mean, just, it was a very, he was not forthcoming.
And none of the city council members were put on the stand. Is that correct? There were a couple that were subpoenaed.
That's correct.
That's
they
correct.
were subpoenaed, but we chose not to call.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess the big picture question is, do you guys feel like you got all the information that you needed for this particular?
I mean, that's a loaded question. We feel like we did the best we could with the records that were given to us.
So what I'm getting at is those that weren't put on the stand, that were subpoenaed and should have been ready to go, that y'all chose not to bring them on there. I mean, I assume that means you felt like we've done what we can to make the case that we're trying to make here.
Yeah, and at some point you also have to just take into account the court's, the judge is getting worn out. You don't want to be the guy who wore the judge out.
Right.
So if you've already made your point with one witness, do you really have to have two? So you get to a bit of that discretionary thinking that you got to go through.
And then let me state as well, the purpose of the hearing this past week was a limited purpose hearing.
Yeah.
There's going to be a final hearing in July. So I know that some people asked me about, why that we didn't call a certain witness. That was done for a purpose and a certain type of strategy. Trust me, those people are going to answer that either by deposition or final hearing. We are going to, get answers from them under oath.
They're not off the hook. Yeah.
All right. So that's a great segue into, let's talk. So this was preliminary. What's the differences? What's next? And when will we have some final? What decision can come out of this that helps us stop the rendering plant? And what's next after that?
I mean, so if we get the preliminary injunction, then the hope is that everything will stay status quo. No forward movement will happen as it relates to the rendering plan until we get to the hearing in July, at which time we'll argue, and Josh can kind of take that more. We'll argue at that point that the zoning law doesn't even allow this to come here at all. And even if the judge determined that it does, then it would have to be rezoned to I-2. And then either it would not be coming at all, or if it's got to be rezoned, then the zoning and planning commission, or the planning commission, and ultimately the city council would have to vote in order to rezone it to be I-2.
which gives us a lot more bites at the apple.
Right.
Um,
Public hearings and public notices and opportunities to be heard.
and I've seen some comments, and there's a question or two. So, if we don't get any decision between now and next Tuesday, is there anything that could happen at the city council meeting that would move the project along further before there actually is an injunction? I mean, is there any risk?
I would say technically that there is opportunity, yes, but I think the city would be very foolish to take such action now with a case pending like this.
And I think the city attorney in the background be going, "Don't do it," just hang on.
It'd be crazy.
Well,
but of course, we've seen a lot of crazy things
yeah.
with this case.
hey, I'm not leaving anything off the table after this 7 months. I mean, who would have thought 7 months ago that I'd be sitting here on a 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon talking to 3 attorneys to a couple hundred people. So
Man, we're good for your image.
Hanging out with lawyers, I don't know if that's very good for you.
yeah, no. Okay, so there is potentially. I mean, there is some. I mean, they could do some things to move some of this along.
They could, and let me also say too that one of the highlights of this week, and I want everybody to understand, if we want that preliminary injunction, we would not have gone forward with this hearing if we didn't believe that was necessary.
Right.
The possibility exists that the court may not agree that we have to have that to preserve the status quo. The court may see that as being something that doesn't prevent any harm at this point. I don't know. We're going to find out.
Right.
But,
That's back to the golden shovel.
Yeah.
Hey, just chill out. It'll be fine.
It'll be fine. It'll take months. It'll take years. No, it won't. The golden shovel means everything changes. Right. And we did argue that. If the court doesn't even grant us that preliminary injunction, the fact remains, though, that we learned a ton through the course of being able to do this hearing. We got documents I guarantee we'd still be fighting for right now if we hadn't had this hearing. We got information on geotech surveys and jurisdictional water agreements with the Army Corps of Engineers and FAA advisories related to bird strikes and what else? I mean,
we got Harry Mcclendon and Jonathan. Well, not Jonathan; he was the attorney, but Harry to admit after he said, "Oh, I haven't been approached." The airport hasn't been to admit right off the bat. I met with Pilgrim's Pride in June 2020, and we discussed putting a rotary plant at the airport. And that I've been working with David Hooks, Sherman Guyton, Frankie Davis, Chad Hare, the FAA. I've been talking to them about it.
And he was the one that approved the jurisdictional water study and the geotech,
He
right?
approved getting appraised. He approved the geotech. He approved all of that. And so, you can parse words, but the onion is starting to get peeled back on what these parsing of words, these statements are. And I think that the more that comes to light, I think is part of what this county needs is, and to say that and the more we find out, we're just going to find out more the longer that this goes on. And so it's a real opportunity, I think, to do some soul searching for those leaders who maybe have gone thinking that it won't get to this point. Oh, it's getting to this point, and it's gonna get worse too. So and to rethink perhaps continuing down this, because there's going to be more depositions, more records. This was just the preliminary. So hopefully that will be a positive light that comes from this as well.
So, Phil, I'm gonna direct this straight at you because you're the only actual politician, I would say, sitting in the room.
I resemble that remark.
Yes. So with all this transpiring, and as we see this, and we have definitive fact that whatever, we won't call it lying, but certainly not speaking whole truth. How do we trust anything that's said at an airport authority meeting now, or even at some of the city council meetings? I mean, what are we supposed to do now? That's the question that keeps coming up in my mind. It's
actually a question that I asked Mayor Guyton on the stand. I had him on the stand, and I've forgotten what thread I was pulling at that particular moment, but I asked him. I said, "So, with what you just told us, how are the people who are sitting out here in the gallery right now, and the others who are involved in the suit, and the ones who are in the opposition group that care deeply about this, how are they supposed to know that they can even get their issues addressed? How can they feel? I'm paraphrasing, but I just basically said, how can they trust you to address their concerns? And he didn't have a good answer to
He
that.
said, I don't know.
I mean,
it was very flippant. Said, I don't know.
Like, I mean,
And I pointed out to the court, Judge, it took a lawsuit to get some kind of activity because nobody was responding to their concerns. Nobody. And have I seen some things go viral in political days? I have. I mean, we had the wind farm issue that I was fighting here back in the day. We had the toll bridge issue down on the coast most recently. This one is as viral and as deeply concerning to the members of the community as any I've ever seen. And it's those viral issues. So talk politics for a second. It's those viral issues that people in elected office better pay close attention to, because they leave scars and they don't go away. When I got elected in 2010 to the Alabama State Senate, people thought that the legislature that had given itself a 65% pay raise 3 years before that everybody would have forgotten. That was one of the key campaign issues of 2010. Everybody remembered because it was viral. And this is viral. And local officials who are ignoring this, whether you be in the delegation for Montgomery or whether you're in, City Hall or on one of the boards, you better pay attention because viral leaves scars and people care.
Here's another thing we learned is that they are, like I said at the beginning, they are following this opposition. In the records they produce, they have regular updates from their PR guy at the city of what this opposition page is doing and saying, and printouts of the page and updates. And they referenced it in court just over and over about what it's with just disdain and contempt about what the Facebook page has to say. And, so they recognize, I think, the viralness to extent of this issue and are following it some, but just aren't to the point where they recognize that this is a voice that needs to be heard and is going to have to be heard. This isn't just they can't continue this. So you're posting on the Facebook page, you're being involved in the Facebook page. I say this how important it is. It is so important. They are watching this. The Pilgrims Pride, one of their attorneys, was following the Facebook page during the trial in court. Yeah. They are watching this, and I've said it again. It's the 9,000 plus people that are gonna make the difference.
I'll beat the Facebook drum and just the social media drum because I've seen comments that are kind of disparaging against this group, as though it doesn't count as thousands of citizens coming together because it's on Facebook. And there are governments that have been overthrown or near overthrown in this world because of social media. So if you're discounting it and you are a politician, then I'd say you're fairly clueless as a politician in 2021. I'm just saying, calling it the way it is. Do not discount the people having a conversation on Facebook. It's just a lot easier to get on Facebook and talk to each other than it is to gather together, especially during COVID, and get 3,000, 4,000, 9,000 people in a room all having a conversation, and that's what has occurred.
That's a great point. What if all this COVID pandemic we had not had social media? And by the way, I'm not always a fan of social media.
It's got its drawbacks for sure.
What if we had not had the opportunity to put the word out like we've had during pandemic? There's been a lot of meetings at City Hall, Airport Authority, or anything else that we would have never had public access to, ever.
And that's, yeah. So, yeah, for folks that are discounting it, or for those that are participating in it, keep it up. Like I said, we're going to have a lot more, I think, a lot of the product documentation. We're going to try and figure out how to make it easily digestible, because I get a little nervous when I see Christy's office and the boxes and boxes and boxes of stuff. So we're going to try and make sure that everybody has an opportunity to look through if you're so inclined. We'll try and keep you as informed as we possibly can. Any other? I think we're about time to get it wrapped up. Any other major points that you guys? I see you've been scribbling some notes over there.
I got everything covered, so everything's checked off.
I'll just say I'm enjoying working. We're two separate law firms, but I'm enjoying working together. It's been good.
We really enjoyed
Likewise.
it. Really good team. So I think that it's great for the group to see, this is a big case, and it takes a team in order to do that. And Phil's got boxes and boxes, and we do it too. So, it's been fun to watch. I want to also say how I believe when you see kind of how we're working together, and then you look at how the city and the airport authority and the IDA attorney, like it's almost like they don't even want to, claim anything. And so there's not a lot of teamwork you see on that side, and you see some team. So that's part of the whole opposition, that everybody is pulling together, working together, sharing information, all pulling the rope at the same, in the same way. It's just been a joy to watch and be a part of.
I love you guys.
Well, I know there's a lot of folks that have been very, very appreciative to all you guys, and I will I would like to point out that I saw multiple comments over the last a week or so that people talk about, what are our attorneys doing? What are our attorneys doing? And those are citizens that they actually are paying the other side's attorneys in most cases through taxes or other, and here that's not what's happening, but you guys are still referred to as our attorneys, and there's a lot of power in that, and I think that's it's sad, but pretty cool to see that you've got folks coming together, and that's the way we're thinking about this.
It's a real honor. It's a real honor to be a part of that. It really is, and we feel that. We hear that, and we feel that, and we all feel like you're part of our team too. So it's pretty cool.
One other thing that I saw, a couple comments about Judge Day. Number one, is that an elected position?
It is.
Okay. And I'll sum it up with some of the question on that, and obviously being careful in how, is there any, all I've heard is that he is being professional and fair as a judge should be. That's the impression I'm getting from you guys.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
yeah.
Okay. So that is, I want to make sure
He's
that
just a professional, methodical, good legal mind. When he was a lawyer,
Yeah.
he's just good at what he does.
And he was, and the other judges will even say this. He was one of the go-to lawyers on property issues in the county, and his orders that he's been issuing in this case, even when they don't go entirely our way, it's hard to argue with him because he puts it all together almost like a small brief. And
he's clearly spending a lot of energy and time. He wants to get this right. It's important to him. You can tell that with him.
Listen, here's a classic example of that too. So the other day, I told you we told y'all that on Thursday morning, IDA showed up with 400 pages. The judge. So the rest of us got lunch, right? The judge broke for lunch, and he made the comment he was going to be sitting in his office eating a banana, going through 400 pages, and he came back right after that with pages of notes to tell us what he had seen. So that's what he's doing. He didn't go get a burger.
Yeah.
He sat in his office and went through paperwork to make sure he had it ready for the next round.
So again, from some of the comments I've seen in there, I just want to make sure that was said, that hey, obviously there's a pretty key player in all of this, and and I think everybody would probably have the right at this point to be questionable about a lot of folks around here and what roles they're playing, but the senses and the respect is very much there, and
we're really blessed in Etowah County. We have a good bench.
Yeah.
We really have all judges. All of
Yeah.
our judges are a good. They are impartial. They're fair. So we're really blessed here, and George Day is definitely that.
well, good. All right. I think that's pretty much. I know, guys, there were a few more questions in there. Some of it I think we will get answered in the comments from folks. But I think I'm going to get out of here, and I've got to go celebrate my nephew graduating from Southside. So I know this is a lot of stuff going on as we wrap up school. Huge thank you for your time, for coming.
Thank you, Michael.
I know you two are like always here every time I come up here. So
they work here actually.
no. I mean like after hours, because that's usually because I work during the day and then I'm usually up here during the night. So, but Phil, thanks for coming over. And thanks for, I mean, I'm seeing that in the comments a lot of thank yous, and I'm sure you guys will continue to hear that.
Well, it just the messages and the support that we receive from everybody has just been overwhelming. It's amazing. All the late nights, all the hard work. You know, when you get that, it makes it so worthwhile. So that means a lot to us as well too. Thank you for all you're doing to support us.
So there was one comment. Anything we can do as taxpayers to avoid paying their attorney fees?
No.
So I would say yes, and not immediately, but the answer is yes. As a voter, if you live in Gadsden in particular, pay attention. Keep paying attention for the next election cycle, because that can change all of that. You may not be able to stop them from being paid now, and I know that's going to come across as a threat. But apparently, democracy seems to be construed as a threat. But that's just the way politics works. So, I mean, it is what it is. So that is one answer. You can't avoid paying some of these guys down the road by changing the elected officials that will hire different people. Just putting it bluntly. But thank you guys. Like I said, we're going to try and get more information out. We'll try and for those of you that don't have the hours and hours and hours to spend, we'll try and keep it digestible so you can stay informed. For those of you that do have hours and hours to spend,
Call me. You can help me look through documents.
yeah, we'll definitely get everything out there, and that's where the action groups through Advanced Etowah have been a huge help. I know there's been a few things that I've got going on that being able to reach out and get some folks to go, yep, I'm willing to do that. That's pretty awesome to see, and especially when you're dealing with something as nasty as politics. But guys, y'all have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. I will make the pitch. Please be careful, whatever you're doing. I know a lot of folks are being out on the water. That's near and dear to my heart from Bucks Island. But there's a lot of craziness that can happen on Memorial Day weekend. It's a very dangerous time. I guess 20 years in the Navy, that's all I've ever heard every Memorial Day weekend. Be careful. And I hate that we got to remind everybody, but please be smart out there, but enjoy it. Don't forget what this weekend is truly about. And I know those that we remember and those that have fallen would be more than happy for you to get out there and barbecue, go play with the kids, enjoy this beautiful area of the country that we live in. And so y'all have a great Memorial Day weekend. We'll be back at you with more information